Officially, the Macedonian government and the Greek government too say that there is no planned meeting between Prime Ministers Mitsotakis and Mitskoski. What are your views? Do you expect an unofficial, perhaps short communication between the two Prime Ministers, or will they just part ways at the NATO summit?
Maybe they can meet on the sidelines of the summit, but there is no planning on behalf of the Greek government, at least, to meet with the Prime Minister of North Macedonia. There is clear dissatisfaction on our side with the way he has handled the first days, the first weeks of his premiership in North Macedonia. And I know that Prime Minister Mitsotakis will bring this issue up during the summit, because on the Greek side, there is a clear discontent with what has been going on in North Macedonia since the last elections.
Before the summit, Pentagon requested that the Prespa agreement should be left out of the NATO summit. But also yesterday, the spokesperson of Greek government, Marinakis, said that Mitsotakis does not give up on Prespa agreements being a topic of the NATO summit. Do you think that this is the right time to do this?
Well, it's not a matter of timing. It's a matter of showing respect towards an agreement that links the two countries. The Prespa agreement, for me, is a mutually beneficial agreement, both for North Macedonia and for Greece. And those who undermine the agreement, those who put the agreement under question, or those who violate the very basic terms, the fundamental terms of the agreement, are not doing the right job, and they are not for sure serving the interest of stability and the interest of positive bilateral ties between the two sides. North Macedonia and Greece have been at odds for quite some time. After the Prespa agreement, there was a new era between Greece and North Macedonia. We have to build on the Prespa agreement rather than undermine it. So in that respect, it is not a matter of timing. It is a matter of sending a very clear, a crystal clear message to the new leadership of North Macedonia that the agreement should be respected at any cost, and that the agreement should be respected in every single article of the agreement, not only on those articles that each side might pick for its own sake.
Prime Minister Mitskoski said that he will respect in future Prespa agreement. He also said North Macedonia during his oath in the assembly, but he also mentioned that Greece has a lot of things to do, to not forget the memorandum that are still stuck in the Greek parliament for years, the road signs and etc. Do you think that maybe it's better Mitsotakis and Mitskoski to sit down and essentially talk, put the arguments on the table, instead of sending only messages between Skopje and Athens, or in Brussels and Washington and etc.?
Personally, I'm always in favor of dialogue and of consultations. And it is true that our side should have ratified some memoranda in the previous years. And also, we should have consulted the North Macedonian government, the previous and the current one. But of course, the problem with the current North Macedonian government, including the new president, is that they have shown disrespect of the Prespa agreement, and actually they have violated the Prespa agreement from the very start of their terms, both the president and the prime minister. There is no such country with the name Macedonia. There is one country with the name North Macedonia based on the Prespa agreement, which is a name that should be mentioned and should be respected both within North Macedonia and outside North Macedonia. So it's not a matter of self-determination, as the president or the prime minister have said. It is a matter of respecting the agreement or not. So that is a problem. But again, the only way, the only path is through dialogue. Greece is the most historic, as you know, country in the Balkans with regards to its presence in the Western constitutions, both the European Union and NATO. And Greece, of course, wants to promote and further stability in the wider periphery, including the Western Balkans. You also know that Greece has been an advocator of North Macedonia's candidacy for the EU, and Greece actually opened the road for North Macedonia to NATO after the Prespa agreement, which was a precondition for North Macedonia to enter NATO. So in that respect, we should take that into consideration and end up with solving the issues, or at least attempt to solve the issues.
What about the Greek side? Because Mitsotakis is in power now, but the memorandums are stuck in the assembly for years, from 2019. Before Mitsotakis, we had a government who was using the new constitutional name inside and outside from the country. But do you see blame that all these years, these memorandums were stuck in assembly? Maybe with the implementation of those memorandums, we will have some kind of a different connection from official Athens.
I frankly don't think that it is, I mean, what is happening right now on behalf of the new leadership of North Macedonia is a result or a product of Greece's unwillingness, or the current government's unwillingness in Greece to ratify the memoranda. As I told you before, the memoranda should have been ratified since 2019. So this is something that the Greek side should have done and should do sooner rather than later. But the stance and the position that the current leaders in North Macedonia demonstrate is by no means, in my mind, linked to the memoranda. But of course, every side should do its part in showing respect for the Prespa agreement.
You mentioned that it's good to have a meeting between Mitsotakis and Mitsotakis and to talk. Where do you see that meeting? Skopje, Athens, Brussels, maybe within the framework of EPP, given that New Democracy and VMRO-DPOMNA are sister parties?
First meeting should be in a neutral place, instead of Athens or Skopje or Thessaloniki maybe, or anywhere within the two countries. Brussels, Washington, Berlin, Paris, you name it. But again, it's a matter of willingness. And as I said before, it's a matter of understanding the very obvious that the Prespa agreement is the last good news that we have had in the wider Balkan periphery for some years. I cannot recall since 2019 any other good news, positive news for the stability of the region. So given that, all sides, including the two that have signed the Prespa agreement, should respect it in every single word of it.
If we put aside the problems between Greece and North Macedonia, finally, what outcome do you expect from NATO summit? Will there be any decisions? China criticized the behavior of NATO before the summit in Washington.
Well, it's a summit that is taking place in a very dire situation, both for President Biden, who is hosting the summit, shortly after the unsuccessful, to put it mildly, participation or presence that he had in the debate against Donald Trump. So it won't be an easy thing for President Biden. Everybody is going to, look into maybe, a mistake or a disorientation or anything that he does that might be linked with the upcoming presidential elections. So in that respect, the summit already is not that important as it should have been, given that the celebrations are for the 75 years of NATO. But of course, there are many challenges that NATO has to tackle. The first, of course, being the war in Ukraine and Russia's assertiveness. The other has to do with China. China that is not as assertive as Russia, but of course is a very important player globally. Today, the news from Moscow were not good for NATO, given that the president of India met with Vladimir Putin, and that was even an indirect message on behalf of India that it is not adopting the position of the West. We already knew that with regards to the war in Ukraine, and India has its own foreign policy, irrespective of the will or the interest of the West. That is certainly not very good news, because India is a very important player, not only in Asia, but in the globe. And of course, NATO has to tackle other issues with regards to European stability, especially if we have a new president in the US after November elections, and if that president is Donald Trump. And there are, of course, issues linked to terrorism, to organized crime, migration, energy, the climate crisis. You know, although NATO is a defensive by nature, is a defensive organization, after the fall of USSR and the new era after 1990, NATO has expanded its activities. So it is now dealing with a bunch of things that have indirect link, and not only direct link, with security and defense.